Well, welcome back to the Old Fly Guy Network, where we appreciate you following us our continued journey across the country to meet exciting aviators. Today we're at the National War College here at Fort McNair in the nation's capital. And with me today are two military aviators who have a deep history in aviation operation and serving our country, Rusty O'Brien and Mace Carpenter. Guys, welcome back again. Welcome really back again to the network, and thanks for spending some more time with us here today. We've had a great conversation, started the conversation around the F-111 and some of your experiences. Today, in this episode, we're going to kind of advance that thinking around around some of the missions, I believe, and how you use the aircraft and how the aircraft was used to, impact outcomes and the realities of how it all took place. As a refresher, both Rusty and Mace have extensive military careers with a focus on leadership and aviation. And as I mentioned earlier, they have 27 and 34 years of experience between them. And with that, they have just unbelievable amount of experience with this aircraft and in general. And some of the stories we heard in the first episode were something I'd never heard before, and I'm sure we're going to hear a good bit of that today as well. So stay with us as they help us navigate the territory here around the F-111F and the missions that it was on. And I know you're going to find it very interesting, and some of the things they talk about, I know you've probably never heard before. So again, I can't thank you guys enough for spending time with me today, setting up this really neat venue here at the War College. It's really interesting background we have. We have Colin Powell behind us, keeping an eye on us, and so we better act.
National War College grad.
National War College grad. So it's just history is all around us. So with saying all that, let's get started. Where would you like to start? You really gave us a great briefing on a lot of the aircraft, but where do we go from here with it?
How about if, like we talked about just before this, a little bit about the early F-111F missions in support of NATO at Lake and Heath?
Yeah.
Victor Alert?
Victor Alert, both RF Upper Hayford that had F-111Es and the F-111Fs at RF Lake and Heath had primary nuclear missions. And we sat 15-minute nuclear alert as part of our deterrent force against the Soviet Union. And this was serious
What year was this?
business.
Put the time frame. Help me with the time frame.
For the F-111F, it started soon after the aircraft arrived in 1977.
Okay.
And we've debated this, and I've looked it up, and it's cloudy when they stopped doing the tactical nuclear alert. I think it was mid-80s.
Around 89.
It was before I got there in 89 the second
89.
time. It was done by then.
And we were done by, so it's probably around 88 when the Soviet Union started perestroika and changing and breaking apart.
Okay.
We didn't have this deterrent and concern anymore, but we had aircraft, we called them cocked, and there were 7 of them at each base. And you had to be able, no matter where you were on the base, you had to be able to get the aircraft, start it, and take off within 15 minutes. And it was already loaded with nuclear weapons and pre-assigned targets.
And it was two-man control. Like, you couldn't be near the nuclear weapon on the wing. Normally, they were on the wing, B-61s. One man. You had to be together. And there was security police. They were authorized to shoot if anything went untoward against regulation. It was very serious.
Yeah. And we'd practice the alert on a regular basis. They would do what's called scrambles. And it would come from the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe's office, and they would do a scramble at Lake and Heath, and you'd go out there and you'd run out, you'd start the engines, you'd get everything going in the hardened aircraft shelter, and then you would copy a message, and then you'd stand down, because we never executed this. And so we got proficient at being able to launch and be ready. And you would serve Victor Alert tours anywhere from 3 to 4, 5 days at a time.
You'd eat there, sleep there.
You'd eat at the facility, sleep there. The food wasn't too bad.
The food was actually excellent. A lot of people like to do that for.
It was cheap.
It was excellent. It was strictly controlled because if an aircraft, for whatever reason, went off combat ready, maintenance or whatever happened, you would have to notify the Pentagon, and the White House would be informed. It was that strictly controlled because these were, nuclear alert, tactical nuclear alert, low yield weapons. Normally, at one time when I first got there, you had selectable yield.
We
But
did.
they were low yield. Targets were mostly
Up to a
complexes,
megaton.
you know.
Okay.
And they were deep.
You would like 4 of these?
Some
We,
aircraft.
we'd normally, at Lake and Heath, we'd carry 2. At Upper Hayford, we carried 3.
Okay.
And you would have pre-assigned targets. And you went through a real rigid certification process to get all the nuclear knowledge, all the weapon knowledge, all the procedural knowledge, and you had to have it down cold. And you studied for 4 or 5 days. You'd have experts come in and teach you, just 3 or 4 people, or 4 to 6 people at a time. And then at the end of it, you'd have usually the wing commander would come with 7 experts in different areas, and they would grill you. And they would grill the pilot while the weapon systems officer would write from memory the target attack, the radar prediction, and all that. And then when they grilled the radar, then the pilot would write his target attack visual and all the points and where he would be at certain seconds. And then you'd get a battery of questions.
A key focus was how are you going to get to the target, because we would not be the first nuclear aircraft delivery system to all these targets. So we knew, even back in those days, EMP, the effects of EMP,
Electromagnetic pulse.
Okay.
how nuclear detonations would fry electronics and all that.
Okay.
So there'd be B-52s ahead of us, there'd be ICBMs hitting these targets, and then we're going in. 2 things with that. One is that you had to assume that your radar, your INS, most of your aircraft systems would be unoperable. So what they would quiz you on is how are you going to find your target visually? You know, of course,
If you got influenced by that.
and then here gets into the other nuclear detonations in the area. The F-111 had blast curtains. So when you're going in there, these curtains you would pull down, they would keep hopefully the light out, because that would blind you. And the crew was given 4 eye patches. And get this, so that as these things are going off, and your systems are now gone, and you have to look outside to see where you're going, to find your target, you know, follow a river, what it may be, and other nuclear detonations going off, you're going to be blinded by them. So you took turns. You put an eye patch on, and they figured you had 4 chances, you know, 4 eyeballs. And, you know, the aircrew were all on a program called PRP, Personnel Reliability Program, because of the mission, the sensitivity. Psychologically, would you accept that you're going to war, you're going to kill a lot of people, and you're going to probably die? Mm-hmm. So every one of us, I think, you know, we talked about it, we kid around about it, but you knew that if you were launched on a real mission, it was a one-way mission, but you were going to do what you're trained to do, because the phrase my time that we had was that everybody you knew, everything you knew is going to be gone.
Gone anyway.
So you might as well, you trained for this, go do your mission.
You know, it was a mutual it was part of the mutual assured destruction if we had a global nuclear exchange. And like Rusty said, we had these curtains that went over
In the cockpit?
canopy in the cockpit, and then on the front we had these pop-up metal shields. So that kept almost all the light from getting in the cockpit. And one of the problems with the eye patches, though, that I've learned from the medical community, you could cover one eye, and if a nuclear detonation went off, a new det, it would blind and permanently damage your good eye, but you'd get sympathetic blindness in the other eye for a period of time. Now, luckily, that would come back in the eye that was covered, but not in this one. Luckily, you had 2 people in the plane, so you only had one guy looking out at a time.
Wow.
But those are extremes, but our mission was to go out and hit our targets because we were there to protect the United States. And
Without
that was
refueling, of course.
what we were
That was the
doing.
advantage of the long range. And despite all at that time, the most sophisticated navigation and bombing systems in the world, you knew because of the EMP of other nuclear detonations, we'd probably be a dumb bomber.
Yeah, it was
A dumb and blind bomber.
the tankers. I go back, I like tankers.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do too now.
One of my instructor pilots in pilot training was a tanker pilot, and he would describe that his wartime mission as a tanker pilot was to take the B-52s over the Arctic Ocean, give them all the fuel they had except for 10 minutes. And then the B-52s would go strike their target, and the tanker guys would have to bail out over the Arctic. That was their job.
And that happened in real life?
No.
Oh, I was going to
That's
say,
if we had the global nuclear
Okay.
exchange.
Oh my gosh.
That's what people were
They were prepared to do.
You got to put in the context that, you know, this is World War III. This is probably the end of the world. You know,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
but yet you're trained, very highly trained for that,
Yeah.
and you do your mission.
Yeah, we had nuclear surety inspections, and if you made one minor mistake, the wing busted the entire inspection, and you did things over again. I mean, it was really rigid and tightly controlled. Rusty mentioned two-man control, and that was for anything with the nuclear. You couldn't go into the jet by yourself into the shelter. You had to have two people there and the security guys there. You had guards for each one of the shelters, and all that was gated. So it was very professionally done, but it was a serious mission.
Wow.
At the same time, we had our conventional mission, which we thought was more likely to happen. We talked about that in the first episode. You know, weapon loads were the unguided weapons at that time. You know, cluster bomb units, Rockeye, which is a type of cluster bomb.
Kim,
Chem. We had dome 500 and 2,000 pound bombs. Our target sets in a conventional operation against the Russians or Soviets, depending on what year. Bridges, a few airfields, but largely it was stopping the Russian advance, meaning going after tanks.
Okay.
What hit me, when I first got there, I was chief of weapons of the 494th Fighter Squadron, and I kept thinking, you know, we're using these dumb bombs and we're going to go after tanks. You know, I thought this aircraft was for something a little more special than that. But, you know, that was our focus, unrefueled from England, so that was the advantage for NATO. Things changed dramatically. In '81, we used to have a 20 millimeter gun in the weapons bay of the F-111F. And that came out, and they put in the huge pave tack laser designator, IR acquisition laser designator. That gave precision to the F-111F that made us far and above better than any other aircraft in the world. And that on top of our night all-weather long-range penetration at low level with terrain following radar was a huge technical leap and combat capability leap for NATO. And so our target sets at that time started to change a little bit to be, okay, these guys really are best at hitting command posts and those point targets. We talked in the first session, a laser-guided bomb, a hit is anything inside of 10 meters, 30 feet. If you're 40 feet, that's considered a miss.
but
When you're
most of the time we're hitting within 3 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
So-
to put this in perspective, in World War II, when the bombers went after targets, you may take 1,000 aircraft total on a target to finally destroy it. In Vietnam, you were taking dozens, maybe 50 to 80 aircraft to take out a target. But late in Vietnam, when we started getting the laser-guided bombs, now you're taking 2 aircraft.
Holy man.
And the
And
example of that
this
is the
is
Paul
what
Duma
happened.
Bridge in Hanoi. Was finally, all these sorties that were lost trying to bomb the damn bridge, they finally used laser-guided bombs and they did it.
Got
That
it
was an
immediately.
old system. The pave tack was, 10, 15 years later, was much refined from that, more powerful.
It was paved penny, wasn't it?
They also had a design system, it was buddy lasing, which
So
tough.
once again, we didn't, the whole concept of this platform being a nuclear platform as well, and being nuclear ready, I don't have enough fingers, 15 minutes
15 minutes.
from notice to be there, have your mission, and you're,
I mean, it was serious, man. It was serious. And if an aircraft came down off mission, like one time I was setting nuclear alert and they did an emergency destruct exercise, the weapons guys did. And that was in case the base was going to be overrun and they wanted to destroy the nuclear weapons by doing a shaped charge into them. So they used my aircraft and they came in, they set up all this and they do their exercise and train, destroying these bombs so they can't be taken intact. And then they're getting ready to leave, they clear everything out, and then one of the airmen said, sir, I left my screwdriver underneath the plane, can I get it? So I had motioned to the security policeman, I said, he's good to go. So he comes in, and he forgot to take his helmet off, his helmet was still on. So he reaches down to get it, and he stood up, and he hit the nose of the B-61 nuclear bomb, and it cracked the nose. And I went, Airman, I think you broke my bomb.
The nose cones of B-61s were like a maroon color, really kind of pretty. They were made, by the way, by the Coors Beer Company.
Yeah, they looked like mahogany, but they were really plastic.
Okay.
And
I never
they
got
all
that
had the same
connection.
scratch in them. But that was an important piece of the bomb, and I told my Wizzo, I said, go tell command post, we got a weapon down. and we had to replace it. So that went all the way to the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe that Lakenheath's got a line down.
I got two quick stories following on to that. I was coming off alert one time as a captain. I was in the 494th, and I would put your weapon, your 38 millimeter at the time, then little plastic cases with 38,
Rounds and
cartridges.
Yeah.
And I put it in the sidewall, and I bring everything back, and all of a sudden there's a bullet missing. I got in so much trouble because they had to call, the Pentagon. We have an aircraft taken off
bullet.
status, and squadron commanders yelling at me, and we had to go out there and try to find the damn thing. Another quick story. Late 70s, early 80s at Lakenheath, they were doing an engine run-up, of course, strictly controlled. They had two B-61s, real tactical nukes. The F-111 is known for puking out stuff out of the back, hydraulic fluid and stuff like that. Well, somehow, the flare dispenser in the back, something ejected, and it started a fire in the back of the hangar. And the crew's in the aircraft, and they know there's a fire, underneath the tail
plane.
in the back, and they got two live, And so there was no call, there's no coding and stuff like that through all the NATO code channels to even taxi. So the SP there, the security policeman, with his weapon, really was trained by procedures to fire if they started to move the aircraft without all the
Authorization.
authorization. So then, the crew's trying to go, what do we do? So they're trying to motion to the guy, fire. Good decision by the cop not to shoot at these guys. So they taxied out to get away from that.
Get out of the shelter.
So it was a very strict environment.
Wow.
Now, the F-111s carried chaffs and flares.
Okay.
These were countermeasures to enemy air defense.
This is perfect, by the way, because I was wondering what's the defensive side, if any?
Well, we had three things. We had chaff flares, and we had radar warning indicators, and then we had jamming pods.
Okay.
So,
And AIM-9s.
well, if we had to shoot something down, yeah. But chaff is basically wire mesh. It looks kind of like steel wool, and it's thrown out, and it reflects, causes a lot of radar reflections, and can help defeat a radar-guided missile at you.
Okay.
Flares is a big heat spot, and it burns at 1,800 degrees or something, and it goes out the back, and infrared-type seeking missiles can home in on that. So these are loaded on the aircraft for alert. So, and we used them in combat too. Good stories on those. But these are some of our countermeasures. The other countermeasures is we had radar warnings, and we could tell which radars were coming up for the most part, and what kind of missile it was, and where roughly it was, what quadrant it was.
There's a visual display. It's called
Visual
RAW,
display.
R-H-A-W, radar homing and warning indicator. Little scope like that. It was all not that accurate, but it would also give you an audio. And depending
beeps.
on that, a lot of people were annoyed by that. Like in combat, I wasn't paying attention to that. We also had ECM pods we carried, normally behind the strakes in the back of the aircraft. Early on, it was
Well, we had
ALQ
two
119.
systems. We had the 94s that were built into the F-111s, and they would generally do the older surface-to-air missiles. And then we had, like Rusty said, the 131 pods that fit.
Or
in the
119.
These are all like
119s.
electronic
Yes.
jamming.
jamming. And they would constantly get reprogrammed and updated for the new threats. And they would go back in the back of the plane underneath between the engines.
They were, to be quite honest, I never learned, even though I was a weapons officer, I never really learned all those things. I would normally, in combat, I would ask one of the EWAs, so for the threat today, what should I set it on? And there was a panic mode. I thought, that's good. That's good.
Panic
I
mode.
paid a
Then,
little more attention
to me, it was annoying to hear all these do-do, do-do, You're trying
And so
to do
you
your
would
job,
adjust it so you could know different tones and things, kind
yeah,
of what to start
Theoretically,
being
yeah,
your
theoretically.
defensive move might
And
be.
it's not 100% accurate because you're looking at electronic
Sure.
pulses, but you could roughly tell if you had an SA6 out there, an 8, or a 2, or a 3, and it would help inform about possible threats and what you should do.
But to me, they were not all that accurate either, because I remember in the first couple nights of Desert Storm, I was talking to the when I'd go up to Riyadh, I'd go into their top secret and above. There are things they had that I could see the
black
electronic
hole.
order of battle. And we were debating, me and I knew the chief of CENTAF Intel, and do the Iraqis have SA-5s? Because SA-5 is a Russian system, long range. That's what I was concerned about. We didn't know. Well, the first couple nights of the war, we're getting SA-5 indications on our raw gear. And, but I also heard it could also be F-15, our own F-15 radars locking onto us. So I remember calling a good buddy of mine from the force, Danny Kremble, who's the F-15 squadron commander, and argue with him on the phone about, you guys got to stop locking onto us, because it's giving us an indication it's an SA-5.
Oh, okay.
And that's the guy I told in the first session. As I'm talking to him, all of a sudden he's going, I got to go. I said, why? He said, a Scud just landed nearby.
Anyway, we did have those countermeasures, and we looked outside a lot, or I did.
You're right.
As a pilot, I was looking outside all the time.
Because these were
pretty
visual
much.
things you
visual
could see.
cues and
from
looking for
Vietnam,
stuff.
I mean, even decades later, what Mace just said, you got all these things, but nothing beats looking outside. And
Kind of like
it's very
flying the
obvious.
airplane.
It's
You
very
look
obvious.
outside.
ZSU 23-4, which I didn't like at all. It was a Soviet-based vehicle that had 4 23 millimeters on it. It was radar guided. And they would shoot out, and I mean, they're only about that big, the tracers, but they looked real big. And they'd come very close to the aircraft. And that's kind of a scary thing.
I bet.
But again, what Mace said, visually, he used to say in Vietnam, you can't defeat a SAM unless you see it.
Well, the first night of the war, I attacked H3, and it was like the most impressive set of fireworks I'd ever seen. And so I'm coming north to south on the target, and the AAA and the tracers and all the exploding shells in AAA were stopping at about 8,000 feet. Well, I'm coming in at 200 feet, and I bump up, we release the weapon, and I just didn't come down again. I didn't go low level as planned. I just kept going high to get over the top of it all. And that was based on visual.
What you could
cues,
see.
What I
It's
could
also,
see.
I think it's a composite of, like what Mace is saying, it's your onboard jammers and things like that. It's seeing it, but it's also mission planning. Listen to intel. Know where things are. Third night of the war, we hit Balad Airfield from the north, and we're bugging out around Baghdad at 200 feet, almost supersonic. And our INS died. We had really nothing to navigate by. And so I knew there was a Roland at a little airfield over here. The Iraqis, unfortunately for them, were keeping their lights on at night. So even at 200 feet, we could tell where the airfield was.
Okay.
So we just kept, because I knew the range of that Roland, and I thought if we just keep on the outer perimeter of that, we'd be okay. And sure enough, they shot at us, and it detonated behind us because I knew the range of that, and just kind of keep an eyeballing it. I had another one, and then unfortunately, crew coordination broke down, and I said, Sammy, ready, flare. I meant to say chaff. And so, it's pitch black out. And I wanted him to put chaff out, to radar jam the SAM. Of course, what happens is all this flashing behind us, and what that did is all the Iraqi AAA knew where we were.
Well, it's kind of funny. The WISO controlled the master panel for the chaff and the flare.
Okay.
But the pilot actually made it happen.
Okay, so he made a
So
setting.
he had the master pilot, he turned it on and everything, and then the pilot, you had a switch that toggle went up or down or middle. It was flare up if you just wanted a flare, and if you wanted a chaff flare, you went flare up. If you went down, you got only chaff.
Okay.
Because the flare's a big, and sometimes people would inadvertently drop a flare, and sometimes it looked like another plane was flying right over the top of you, because when the flare dropped, it created a shadow from your plane, and it looked like another fighter flew over the top of you.
Something no one would ever know unless you were there.
Yeah, we
That's
were there.
cool.
Now, we were clear of the target area, clear of threats, and we're leaving Iraq after attacking a target, and my Wizzo says, I'm going to get the candy bars out. And I go, yeah, Dave, great. So he reaches back for the candy bars, and I was evil at the time, and I said, oh no, SA-6, and I hit the flare up, and the flare goes off behind it like an explosion, and this shadow goes over the top of us, and Dave goes, golly, maneuver. And I was like, gotcha. So Dave was really smart. After that, he got the master panel turned off when we were out of the target area.
So you couldn't.
So I couldn't do that again.
It's unexpected things. Another one of my less than shining moments. Third night of the war, we were supposed to hit Balad Airfield north of Baghdad from the north, and we decided we're going to go at altitude. Okay, this is
Altitude being
15 to
medium
20,000
altitude.
feet.
Okay.
Excuse me. So we had 12 F-111s going in the tanker, and Tommy Crawford was the mission commander for the whole thing. And he called me on HF radio because I had, I knew I was planning all this stuff. Our F-4G Weasels didn't show, or harm shooters. Our EF-111 jammers didn't show, and our F-15 force protection didn't show. So, he said, "What do you think we ought to do?" And I private HF channel, nobody else could hear. And I said, "Tommy, we're all dressed up. Let's do it."
Let's do it.
Well, so this is one of the first nights we went at altitude, north of Baghdad. So we get up to the IP, and I'm number 2. They go in. We're about staggered by a couple thousand feet, maybe 30 seconds in trail, 12 aircraft. And I'm focused on, what we're doing. The guy right behind us they're flying along. They're getting ready to hit the target too, about a 20-mile leg from the IP initial point to the target. And they have an ATOL go by the canopy, an air-to-air missile. So they look
behind
around.
you.
They look around, and there's a MiG-23 flogger right here. They're about 13,000 feet altitude, right? The guy's like flying wing with him. He's got his lights on. And so what they did, they got exactly what the F-111 should not do. They got into a high scissors with the guy. And so they finally split us, hit their target. They got silver stars for that. So this is at the time that we came off the target, and AWACS is telling us we've got a MiG-25 chasing us. We're at 200 feet. He's up at 5. I wasn't too worried. Then I hear Bigfoot, who is number 4. He's at the IP, and he's trying to talk to Cherokee, who is AWACS. And this is over the UHF frequencies. And Cherokee, who are all these aircraft at our IP? Are those our F-15s? And I remember the AWACS guy controlling saying, "Picture clear, picture clear." I can't see.
You can't see.
Because, I'll get back to that. So anyway, what it was is the remaining 8 F-111s got jumped by MiGs. And so all of a sudden I hear Bigfoot saying, "Okay guys, these are MiGs, bug out," and they hit another target. But I'm thinking, oh shit, my fault. Why did I recommend we go to this target without any force protection or anything like that?
Well, a little hindsight maybe, but
It's
all
war.
dressed up. I like the way you take that on.
Yeah. At a certain point, you go what I would call go offensive. You're not thinking defense anymore. You're thinking offense. You're going to kill the target, and you've got to focus on that, or you're going to miss it, or you may screw up. So at a certain point, you just got to accept the risk and go kill something, blow something up. And that's kind of a mindset that you train with all the time in peacetime. So when you get into combat, it just comes natural.
Very natural for you.
Yeah, and 99% of the time, you're always going to think defense, but at a certain point, it's getting the mission done.
And I think we keep going back to another theme here that I think is very important, is that you train, you practice, you have these procedures like step by step what you're going to do, but then you got to be ready for the uncertain aspect.
Well, we talked about some other situation there a little bit earlier. I think maybe even off camera here, and you were just the way you explained it is just stuff happened,
It happens.
And well, we were talking about the incident where you were training. Now it comes back to me in England, and you had your wingman that had and listening to some of that audio, and it didn't sound like anybody was you were out of control at all. No. I mean, there was higher tones and voice and such, but I never sensed that anyone was out of control. It was very specific, very controlled, very, like you said, practiced.
Yeah, and when they eject the accident board comes and reviews every Air Force crash, Class A mishap, and they said the entire tinship was completely professional in the way everything happened, the way things went.
A little different
and
perspective.
You train hard to do that.
We actually had a phone call a week or two ago with Dave Radcliffe, the guy who ejected. And I was their ops officer at the time. It was a different aircraft coming from different areas, but I was the mission commander. I was the operations officer for the squadron, and I was the first one over the practice target. This is in northern Norfolk of England.
Yeah. RAF Sculthorpe.
The North Sea is just off to our right. So I'm hearing Mace and the others going, Rex, you're on fire, you're on fire. And I'm thinking, I'm watching these little villages go by and churches, and I'm thinking, don't eject, because I was not his flight lead, because I
was
was mission
wondering
commander up
about
forward.
that too, what it
But
lands on, right?
I was thinking about, because the dialogue was starting to get, you got to hear, you've heard part of it.
I've heard part of it, yeah.
So I'm trying to not interfere with that, because I wanted them to, look, just go out over the ocean and eject there. Don't, but as it turned out, it was
pretty, they had, the accident board found
Major,
they had
yeah.
3 to 5 seconds of flight controls left, and you didn't know what the aircraft was going to do, because the aircraft is powered through hydraulics to the flight controls.
Okay.
Computers.
He's belly up to us. Fuck, it looks like he's on fire.
65 flight is coasting now, Blake.
He was on fire. No shit.
Knock it off, knock it off. Rex 6-1, knock it off. X25, knock it off. 26, knock it off. 37, knock it off. 28, knock it off.
He's on your side. He's on your side.
Off, 2-1. 6-2, you visual?
Yeah, F4 has you visual, you are on fire.
6-2, you're on fire. Turn left, get down the jet.
No.
6-2. Single F-111.
NATO, acknowledge your position south of Blakeney, 5 miles. Continue.
Copy, I got a fireball in the middle of an open field. I've got a good shoot. The capsule looks like it's doing well.
Got the quads. 52.
Shore rescue, scramble, vector 350, fireball sighted at sea off Blakeney Point. London Centre out.
What's that?
That was a hell of a fire.
Yeah, sure was. Okay, I got the quads.
Rake 62, can you describe anything further on what you see?
I'll pass him the quads.
Yeah, we'll pass coordinates this time. The crew looks like they got out safely. Coordinates coming down.
I remember seeing both Dave and BK at the hospital. I don't know why I went there when they were recovered by the helicopter and brought to the hospital. They're fine, a little banged up, but that look in their eyes. I've seen it before with guys who eject. It's just it's hard to describe, but
It's got to be a little bit of a shaky moment. I mean, it's in the whole process. I can't even imagine what that's like. And in this aircraft, I think you were telling me, Mace, that it's sort of like a capsule versus an individual.
Yeah,
like
no
what
seats. It's a whole capsule that goes out. And the advantage of that is you can eject supersonic.
Okay.
And if you tried to eject supersonic or over 450 knots in an ejection seat, your skin starts
Just
peeling off.
Yeah.
And it was a boat. So the capsule, if it landed on the ocean, these air cushions came out, and you actually had a bilge pump mode for the stick that you could pump water out if it got in the capsule. I mean, it was
Really?
a unique design.
The capsule failed a few times, like the attenuation bags that would soften the landing. Guys would sometimes get hurt, but I've known guys who've ejected from Martin Baker seat, and a lot of them get hurt.
Yeah.
And normally in ejection you lose a couple inches of height, an inch or two of height, and they say it comes
Wow.
back.
Well, Dave is an inch and a half shorter after the ejection. He got compression in his vertebrae the way he hit. His whistle, BK Cookwood, he hit the vid, the scope, and hit it, and he had a cut on his forehead, but otherwise he was fine. But anyway, when you talk about that, you go back to trust, and we talked about this once, about the trust in the community, and you really trust one another. And you go to extremes not to lose that trust. And you learn not only the individuals, but the flight members and the squadron members. And your job is to look out for each other and get the mission done.
That brings up in my mind, I don't really remember hearing how many times an ejection happened and there was time for the guy who initiated the ejection to let the other guy know, get ready.
Yeah, and their cockpit voice I could play for you later, but when I said you're on fire, get out, come left, get out of the jet, in their cockpit you heard Jesus. And ready? Yep. And the whistle pulled the handle.
Okay, so he had a little bit in that case, knew it was coming. But,
Right.
but I would imagine that decision is in split seconds.
Sometimes that split second, you don't have time to notify the other guy because, it's a matter of, and then you hear about all the accident reports that say that had the initiated ejection just a tenth of a second sooner, they would have lived, kind of thing. So,
But it's kind of funny. Somebody came up to Dave and said, "You mean Mace just said eject and you ejected?" And he said, "Yeah." He says, "You didn't know you were on fire?" "No, we knew we had problems."
wow.
And he went, "Yeah."
Well, I remember the radio call. It's going back a long time. My old guy flight network. Mine still works. I remember him saying, "Get out of the. You're on fire. Get out of the jet now." Was what you said.
That's what I thought I heard too. When
On
you
fire. I said, "Come left," because I had the same idea about getting out over the water if they could. But you can't see in their cockpit. You have a warning panel in most of the fighters, and then 111, and you had all these warning caution lights and fire lights, and their warning panel was just starting to light up like a Christmas tree. And Dave saw a bleed duct failure. I think BK saw a wheel well hot, and these were really serious things they knew.
Very serious.
They were also having an engine problem, although they didn't know it was on fire. And from a visual, the whole back half of the aircraft was a giant fireball. So not only are they hearing me, they're seeing what's going on in their plane to make their decision.
In F4s out of Luke Air Base in Arizona, my wingman F4 hit a tanker, and I thought the boom did go through the front canopy, and I thought it took the pilot's head off. So I said, I was like that. The F4 is falling off. I said, eject, and then I watched. I'm thinking, oh shit, the guy about that big in his seat going by my canopy. Yeah, and then the worst fear, I saw the F4 without anybody in it starting to fly itself and head south towards Phoenix, which was,
That would have been bad.
whoa.
Yeah.
Eventually the aircraft hit the mountains, but
Yeah. I mean, flying is a dangerous business. We've made it less dangerous. In 1950, we were losing approximately 50 aircraft per 100,000 flying hours.
This is military. We're talking
This is military.
Okay.
So 50 aircraft for 100,000 flying hours, that 1950. And we were doing a lot of experiments, developing new things. Today, our fighter loss rate is around 3 aircraft per 100,000 flying hours. But I mean, when I went to Shaw, we lost, I think, 7 people in 2.5 years from crashes. And it tends to happen sometimes.
and sometimes it goes for unforeseen reasons. It goes in cycles. Like when
Yeah,
I first got to
seems
Lincoln
like.
Heath, they had several fatal accidents back to back to back. Lightning strike, hit
Right.
flight computers, hit a mountain. I mean, just different things happen. But
But it's not going to happen to me.
well, that's the thing. Like with the F-111 capsule, for guys who came from normal ejection seat aircraft, it's very different. And then, it's not like you have a choice. And you know that some guys survive, some guys don't. But you always think, well, I'm going to survive.
Yeah.
And I never had a hesitation if we had to eject.
Well, I
as
think that
goes.
goes back to what you think you highlighted it well. When you're on your mission, you get in the, you're going to go do your mission. That is you're trained to do that if you have to. And I doubt that. I talked to another military aviator. I said, "Well, geez, didn't that bother you this or didn't that bother you that?" He said, "Look, if I was worrying about all the stuff that bothered me, I wouldn't be on point." Just to what you said,
Right.
You couldn't couldn't do it, and
And
so you had to block all that stuff out while
do.
you were.
Pilots in the Wizzos were very good at compartmentalizing. For example, you wake up in the morning, you're all happy, you cut yourself shaving, now you're angry, but now you go to the breakfast compartment, in a different compartment, you're happy again.
Right.
And it's a defense mechanism so you can focus on flying and not other things that will detract and make you more dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you get into, as we talked about in the first episode, where your leadership chain is important. Flight commanders, things like that. You have an officer at the duty desk before people before they go to the aircraft. And you're always checking to make sure people are okay. If somebody's having a problem, at home or something, you're conscious of that.
Well, you're close.
It doesn't always
you
work,
feel
but,
it. It's back to that hard teams you called it, or the teams.
Hard
that
crewing.
Yeah, you. I'm sure you said, "Hey, you're off today a little bit," or what's bothering you.
Well, and Rusty and I have both been ops officers in multiple squadrons, and in the morning go, I'd always make sure I had a chat or a word with everybody flying, just see how they're doing. And on 1 out of 1,000 times, you'd come across somebody that looked really bloodshot eyes, and you'd say, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm sorry, I had a big fight. I can fly, but we fought all night, and it was with my wife. And I said, "No, you're off.
My experience,
Just take a break. It's not worth
it doesn't happen
Good call.
very often, but the more frequent thing is that the frustration crews get when you have weather or maintenance problems, and you're delayed, you have to replan, you had range time, now that the aircraft's not ready, you go into a different aircraft, and the frustration that builds up, and you get people settled down, to go with the flow.
I trust you enjoyed the first half of our conversation with Rusty and Mace around the F-111F. We heard about nuclear readiness, we heard about the early deployment to Desert Storm, and we heard about the teamwork is what really the glue that kept it all together and made it work. There's much more to follow in the second half of our conversation. So stay tuned, stay with us as we learn more about the logistics, the performance, and the success of the F-111F.